wear braces. You come out and go put them back.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So today we are going to solve the rest of our questions, and then we call it a night. The next time we will treat VPCs. I know the VPC and then the cider thing is still lashing people. So we'll look at it, right?
Recording in progress.
Okay. So let's start from the first question. So a company is building a solution that reports Amazon EC2 auto scaling events across all the applications in an Amazon account. The company needs to use a serverless solution to store the EC2 auto scaling status data in Amazon S3. The company then will use the data in Amazon S3 to provide near real-time updates in a dashboard. The solution must not affect the speed of EC2 instances. How should the company
We do this on ST. And
yeah, we do one.
Near real time. Canisius Firehouse.
Masa, it cancel for you.
Okay, you guys do.
Firehouse now, what is that?
Sided there, so if Senegal will say,
Nigeria move.
Yeah.
It be this kind of people where that they smoke. No, be me.
Go.
So,
It's like
like,
what kind of stuff you worry you?
you go out rough.
Stuff like near real time. You look at Kinesis Firehose, right? So it means that these two are out of the equation, right? These two are out of the equation. So you are biasing towards A and D. Okay. But then D looks like more of operational.
Yes, we realize say cloud if events bridge and firehose and I CloudWatch.
No, this one will get what's it called? No. So yesterday we did two set of questions.
Oh, okay.
The one with the events bridge, was on what? Firehose being integrated with another service, right? So that was a different one. All right. So this one looks like an overhead because you now you put a script to install like an this agent, and then you configure the agent to collect the. Anyway, CloudWatch is able to send these metrics right read ahead. They are able to read EC2 instance status, auto scaling status, and all that. So it makes A the best option, right? And then I think we did this one too. Okay, so here a company is migrating applications from an on-premises. So here you are looking at Microsoft Active Directory. So immediately you see Microsoft Active Directory. Think of AWS directory services for Microsoft Active Directory. So AWS has today the network is good. Let me go into the console. Yeah, we did this one yesterday. That's why I'm not like pausing for us to have answers, right? So from 33, we'll pause for answers before we discuss. Okay. So I'm trying to open my console here, then we look at it. All right. So you are looking at what? AWS Directory Service for Microsoft Active Directory. And then among all these answers, all right, it is here and here. All right. But then if you are looking at creating an enterprise edition Active Directory in AWS Directory Service for Active Directory, this will cost you more, right? Or you don't need like all these. You don't need enterprise. You just need just need to use the service. Now, Identity Center is what is going to enable the single sign-on. So the single sign-on service or the single sign-on feature or capability is made possible by what? Identity Center. Okay. And then here, so Microsoft Active Directory, and then the company deploys the application in multiple AWS accounts. The company uses organizations to manage accounts centrally. And then the company's security team needs a single sign-on. So this is why Identity Center comes in, all right, across all company accounts. And then the company must continue to manage the users and groups that are on premises. So here, they are not moving the users entirely to AWS, but they would want to manage the users on-prem. So it means that there should be a kind of a relationship between the AWS directory as well as the on-prem directory. So what you need is what? A two-way forest trust relationship to connect the company self-managed directory with the IAM Identity Center using the AWS directory service, right? So a directory. So you can see this is a service that you're going to use, but there are other services. So you see there is no enterprise service even here. Okay. So you have AWS managed Microsoft Active Directory. There is a simple Active Directory. There is an Active Directory connector. There is a Cognito user pool and then Cloud Directory. All right. So all you need is the AWS Microsoft Active Directory, and then you are good to go. All right. So this makes B the answer. All right. So the questions like can be overwhelming, like there are plenty, but if you take your time to dissect them, you should be able to get your answer, right? So you can spend like 20-30 seconds to answer the questions. So by the time you get to the tougher ones, you have more time to probably spend on the questions, or you can, by the time you end the questions, and then you have like a lot of time to, to do your reviews, all right? Okay, so officially start from 33. A company runs a critical data analysis job each week before the first day of the work week. The job requires at least 1 hour to complete the analysis. The job is stateful and cannot tolerate interruptions. The company needs a solution to run the job on AWS. Which solution will meet these requirements? So A says create a container for the job, schedule the job to run as an AWS Fargate task on an Amazon Elastic Container Service cluster by using Amazon Event Bridge Scheduler. B. Configure the job to run in an AWS Lambda function. Create a scheduled rule in Amazon Event Bridge to invoke the Lambda function. C. Configure an auto-scaling group of Amazon EC2 spot instances that run Amazon Linux. Configure a cron tab entry on the instance to run the analysis. D. Configure AWS Data Sync to run the job, and configure a cron expression to run the task on schedule. So bring answers.
I beg if you read the question again.
Okay. A company runs a critical data analysis job each week before the first day of the work week. The job requires at least 1 hour to complete the analysis. The job is stateful and cannot tolerate interruptions. The company needs a solution to run the job on AWS. Which solution will meet these requirements? I want more answers. So, Obia, please. How many are we now? We are 17 now. And at the beg. Let us all try at least. We should have like 15.
Decided, they always they play game.
Huh?
We the lens we they play game. You know if you pause
Abeg,
games for.
I know they play game or now watch
So
I dey watch. I dey watch.
you they watch game.
Prince,
Yes.
Prince, you know go fit mind your own business.
It make him mute him body. Yeah. Nobody talks to you make him no play, but make him mute him body.
I dey read the
You
question.
pay here.
Make him mute him body.
Isaac,
Yeah.
network issue. Oh, you are waiting for answers.
They wait. We have only.
Oh, so let me continue then.
Okay.
Let me
Sure.
continue. At least if you read and finish, let's give like 1 or 2 minutes there.
All right, sure. So let's look at the question here. Now, a data analysis before the first day of the week. All right. Now, the job requires at least, the job requires what? At least 1 hour. Now, here disqualifies Lambda, right? The maximum runtime for Lambda is 15 minutes, right? The maximum runtime for Lambda is 15 minutes. So it means Lambda can't be used for this. Okay. Now, the job is stateful and cannot tolerate interruptions. This means that we can't use spot instances as well, since we don't know when the instances will be taken. All right. So B and C are out. Data sync, we know, is for data migration. So data sync can be used to run this job. So this leaves us with what? A. Right. So here, what I just did was elimination. Right. I was just eliminating for the ones that I know. So it only leaves me with what? Just one answer. Right.
Hello, Isaac.
Yeah.
Please repeat what you said about Lambda. You said it can only
Run for
what?
15 minutes. The maximum runtime for Lambda is 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. 34. A company runs multiple Amazon EC2 Linux instances in a VPC across two availability zones. The instances host applications that use a hierarchical directory structure. So here, hierarchical directory structure is EBS. Okay. The applications needs to read and write rapidly and concurrently to a shared storage. So shared storage here, we are looking at what? EFS. Oh, I'm giving the what should the solutions architect do to meet these requirements? So A says create S3 buckets, allow access from all EC2 instances in a VPC. B says create an elastic file system, mount the EFS file system from each EC2 instance. And D says create a file system on a provision IOPS SSDIO2 block store, right? And then attach the EBS volume to all the EC2 instances. This is create file systems on EBS volumes that are attached to each EC2 instance, and then synchronize the EBS volumes. No wonder was BS, because this BS. Synchronize the EBS volumes across the different EC2 instances. So answers, I've already given clues. We shouldn't take long on this. Hey, nobody is bringing answers. So and I thought this one would be easy for us. All right, let's move on. Okay, so let's look at this as well. Now, as I said, hierarchical directory structure is EBS, right? EBS supports that. Okay. Now, you might be trigged with read and write rapidly. Okay, concurrently, but and the another keyword is what? Concurrently to shared storage. Now, what should the solutions architects do to meet this requirement? This one is off, right? Because S3 buckets is for object storage. Everything that you store in S3 is considered an object, right? You cannot store files in a hierarchical form. So EFS, we know, is a shared file storage. So yes, it can be mounted on multiple EC2 instances, right? So let's say this one is correct. Let's go to the other ones and see. Now here, you say we should create a file system with a provision IOPS SSD IO2. That's correct, because it has like a lot of IOPS, right? So with IOPS, you're able to do rapid read and write. But then what qualifies this is that it's also an EBS volume. And then EBS, we cannot do multi-attach. And then it says attach the EBS volume to all instances. You cannot do a multi-attach on EBS volume. There is a workaround that you can do to attach EBS volumes, but EBS volumes in itself cannot be cannot do a multi-attach. So this is also out. And then creating a file system, still this is an EBS volume. So this also is out. So it leaves us with B, the elastic file system. And then actually this one has like a lot of throughput, right? So it will fit this use case with the rapid read and write. If you remember, we did another lab on EFS, and then we tested it with there's a utility called, is it Dev.io? I've forgotten. There's a utility that we use to test the throughput, the read and write capability of the EFS file system. All right, so let's move on. Question 35. A company recently migrated a message processing system to AWS. The system receives messages into an active MQ queue running on Amazon EC2 instance. Now, messages are processed by a consumer application running on Amazon EC2 instance. The consumer application processes the messages and writes results to a MySQL database running on Amazon EC2. The company wants this application to be highly available with low operational complexity. Which architecture offers the highest availability? A says add a second active MQ server to another availability zone. Add an additional consumer EC2 instance in another availability zone and replicate the MySQL database to another availability zone. B says use Amazon MQ with active standby brokers configured across two availability zones. Add an additional consumer EC2 instance in another availability zone and replicate the MySQL database to another availability zone. C says use Amazon MQ with active standby brokers configured across two availability zones. Add an additional consumer EC2 instance in another availability zone and then use RDS for MySQL with multi-AZ enabled. This is use ActiveMQ with active standby brokers configured across two availability zones. Add an auto-scaling group for the consumer EC2 instance across two availability zones. Use Amazon RDS for MySQL with multi-AZ enabled. Right, so we have two answers already. All right. Okay, so let's look at the question. So you see all these. We're moving. Okay. So when we talk of active, anytime you see active MQ, then let's look at, we are looking at the service Amazon MQ. All right. Anytime active MQ queue, because it means that we need a broker. All right. So we know Amazon MQ already, and it says the queue is running on an EC2 instance. Messages are processed by consumer, also an EC2 instance. The consumer processes the messages and writes the result to a SQL database. All right. Now, they want the application to be what? Highly available. So anytime you are designing for high availability, you are looking at what? Auto scaling and multi-AZ deployment. Right? Anytime you are designing for high availability, you are looking at auto scaling and then multi-AZ deployment. And then here also you want low operational complexity. Now, if we look at all of these, right, it's C and D that kind of makes sense. They ring a bell. But then what disqualifies C here is the fact that you are adding an additional consumer EC2 instance in the other availability zone. So it means that anytime there is a need to scale up, you still have to do that manual thing. But you want to also reduce operational complexity. So you have to just put the instances in an auto scaling group for the consumer EC2 instance. So it will scale up based on what? The queue or the messages in the active MQ queue or the Amazon MQ queue. All right, across the two availability zones. And then you also use what? RDS for MySQL with multi-AZ enabled. Okay, so this also makes D the answer. 36. A company stores sensitive data in Amazon S3. So sensitive data. So anytime we hear of sensitive data, then maybe it might talk of protecting what? The sensitive data. So you put in your head encryption or MASI. All right. Yes, put that at the back of your head. Now, a solutions architect needs to create an encryption solution The company needs to fully control the ability of users to create, rotate. So let's read this word, fully. The company needs to fully control the ability of users to create, rotate, and disable encryption keys with minimal effort for any data that must be encrypted. Which solution will meet these requirements? So A says, use a default server-side encryption with Amazon S3 managed encryption keys to store the sensitive data. B, create a customer managed key by using AWS KMS. Use the new key to encrypt the S3 object by using server-side encryption with Amazon KMS keys. C says, create an AWS managed key by using AWS Key Management Service. Use the new key to encrypt the S3 objects by using server-side encryption with AWS KMS keys. D, download S3 objects to an Amazon EC2 instance, encrypt the object by using customer managed keys, upload the encrypted object back to Amazon S3. Okay, so I'm seeing B's and then a D. Okay, so let's also look at this. So here, all these things are not important to me. All the statement, all what is important to me is what? Fully, ability to fully control, right? Control the ability of users to create, rotate, and disable encryption keys. All right. So if for a user to fully responsible for their encryption key, then it means that key should be a customer managed key. That is just what I'm looking for. Because you can only manage, you can only be able to rotate, even delete or disable a customer managed key, right? So let's go to KMS. Unfortunately, I cannot create a key because for every key that I create, I will have to, pay. All right. So if I should go to KMS, so you can see there is managed keys, there is customer managed keys, and then there is key stores for testing. So the pricing. Let's see if there is something on customer managed keys here for you to create managed keys across. So KMS is secure. Okay, unfortunately, we are not able to. Let me see the pricing. If it is something that we can find our way around it, then I will just experiment by. So each key that you create costs $1 per month, prorated hourly. The amount charge is the same for symmetric keys. So you are not charged for creating and storage of managed or AWS keys. There is no
Isaac, I'm seeing something like free tier has 20,000 free Amazon AWS request.
Let me see. View free tier details. There's no charge for customer managed keys that you manage and are scheduled for deletion. If you cancel the deletion during the waiting period, the customer will incur charges as though it was never scheduled for deletion. There's no monthly charge for data. So let me see. Free tier. KMS. Oh, now it won't come again. Okay, no problem. $1 there, it won't be anything. All right, so here. Make us stop.
$1 and I'm 12 cities a video. So have that one to go right.
Oh, do. Started go sponsor.
I just started decided with dollar man.
Of late, I know they see dollar. Oh, you.
All right, so I explained the concept of symmetric and asymmetric, right? So if I'm creating a symmetric key, then it means a single key will be used for both decryption and then encryption. All right, so the key usage will be encrypt and decrypt. All right, if I should choose asymmetric, you can see that these options are disabled, right? So use the key only to encrypt and then decrypt data, or sign keypads for digital signing. All right, so anyway, I will not create it though. So I think here it explains it. So if I'm able to create, that's the customer managed key, then I have the full control of what managing my own key. So anytime I would want to rotate it, I'm able to rotate it, or I'm able to create a new one or delete it, right? With AWS managed keys, they are pre-created, and most of them comes with the services that we use. So far I've used EFS, so that's why, and then maybe I choose an encryption, right? That is why these ones are here. So as in when I use more services, the keys, a lot of keys will be populated here, right? So here it is only customer, and then that's the only thing here, right? So we'll move. A company uses Amazon S3 to host its static website. The company wants to add contact form to the web page. The contact form will have dynamic server-side components for users to input their name, email address, phone number, and user message. The company expects to hear fewer than 100 visits each month. The the contact form must notify the company by email when the customer fills out the form. Which solution will meet this requirement most cost effectively? So here you are looking at cost effectiveness. So you are thinking of what? Trade-offs. Okay. So A says host the dynamic contact form in ECS service. Set up Amazon simple email service to connect to a third-party email provider. B says create an Amazon API gateway endpoint that returns the contact form from an AWS Lambda function. Configure another Lambda function on the API gateway to publish a message to an Amazon simple notification service SNS topic. This is host the website. Host the website by using AWS Amplify hosting for static content and dynamic content. Use server-side scripting to build the contact form. Configure Amazon simple queue service. Configure Amazon simple queue service to deliver the message to the company. And then this is migrate the website from Amazon S3 to Amazon EC2 instances that run Windows Server. Use the Internet Information Services IS for Windows Server to host the web page. Use client-side scripting to build the contacts form. Integrate the form with Amazon Workmail. Okay, so one answer. Hey, only see Tapeo. Okay. All right, so let's move on. So here, as I said, the solution is looking at what? Cost effectiveness. Okay. Now, let's look at this. The company is expecting what? Fewer than 100 visits each month. All right. And then the contact form wants to be added, and it will have a dynamic server-side component for users to input their name and then blah, blah, blah. So hosting your contact form on ECS, right? And then setting up the email service to connect to a third-party provider. One, is an operational overhead, and then two, is cost. looking at using the ECS, because ECS is going to provision clusters. So either you are on Fargate or EC2. Fargate is serverless. EC2 is what? It's a server-based service. So definitely you will have to pay for the compute power that you are using. All right. As I said, sometimes some of the solutions, the answers might be long, so you might think otherwise, but that is the right thing. Now you create an API gateway endpoint. Okay, that will return the contact form. So with the website designers and then all that, you know that you can use an API, right? You can use an API call to call a form or to call an action, So all these, these websites that has pop-up forms to take your emails for email marketing, they are API calls, right? It's just that it's configured to just trigger or call the API for first-time visitors. So immediately you visit, it checks to see if you have a previous session. If you don't have a previous session, it just calls the form and then comes up, you fill it, and then it goes back, right? So it's only for first-time visitors. And then now, since the company is expecting just fewer than 100 site visits, there's no need to have a permanent server that is hosting the site. Okay, so what you do is that creating an API gateway endpoint that returns the form, right, from a Lambda function, and then configuring another Lambda function on the API gateway to publish the message to SNS, right? Because SNS, you can also use an email as what as the endpoint, right? So this looks like the viable one. Amplify myself, I don't know what it is, but I think it is for, is it for upgrades or something, right? Yeah.
Can I please show? I want to see the example.
Right, scroll down.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. No, that's it. That's not it. Please show up.
I know they hear you.
36. Personal text is the answer.
Okay, 36. That will be.
Okay, that's one.
We'll move on. All right. So let me just search real quick. What is AWS Amplify? Maybe we might meet a question that's okay. So is Amplify hosting is a fully managed CI/CD and hosting service for fast, secure, reliable, static, and server-side rendered apps that scale with your business. So it supports modern web frameworks. Okay. Full stack application that combines client-side and server-side code. Okay. All right. So it means that the Amplify is also a kind of a viable thing. All right. But using a server-side scripting, build the contact form, and also and also using queue service. And now, queue service does not deliver messages. Okay, so this even though Amplify hosting is viable, it can host both static and then dynamic, but the fact that SQS is here, it disqualifies it. All right. And then migrating S3 to Amazon EC2 instance, as I said, you will continuously pay for the compute power that you are using. Meanwhile, it is only when somebody visits the site. So these are the use cases, right? For cost, it is only when somebody visits the site that they are going to fill the form. So why, continuously use an EC2 instance. So B is the most viable answer, right? Question 38. A company runs a web application on Amazon EC2 instances in an auto-scaling group that has a target group. The company designed the application to work with session affinity. So session affinity is sticky sessions, all right? And then we know that one service that has, okay, let me finish. And then the application must be available publicly over the internet as an endpoint. A WAF, we learned about web application firewall, that's WAF, must be applied to the endpoint for additional security. Session affinity must be configured on the endpoint. So the question itself is giving you the clues. Which combination of steps will meet this requirement? So we are selecting 2. A says create a public network load balancer, specify the application target group, create a gateway load balancer, specify. Guys, am I still connected?
Yes, we can hear you loud.
Oh, okay, I was breaking it. Okay.
Oh,
So
For what?